So today's class is going to be on TnS rules, basically just going to be going over all the rules for TnS, giving examples for each. So to start, we're going to review all the rules once again to make sure that it sticks, and we're going to go over some examples for each as well. Let's start. So for one, we have our rules right here. Rule number one, it's very simple. It's the overlapping high or low, it must be at least 3 points away from both of the edges of the FEG. And simply what this means is that when you're looking for a TnS setup, whatever high or low that you're looking for has to be 3 points away from the edge. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to show you examples of what it looks like and then what we're not looking for. Okay, so for a proper TnS setup, you say you have a bearish FEG like this, and we're looking for a low that overlaps with this bearish FEG. Well, this low, you have to pick your measuring tool or whatever thing that can help you measure it. You want to measure from that low or wherever the potential entry is all the way to the edge of the FEG, and it should be at least 3 points away. In this case, it's 5 points away, and that goes for either side. So if it's, say, for example, it's 3 points away on this side, but the other side is only 2 points away, that is technically an invalid setup because it's not 3 points from both sides, and it does have to be for both edges of the FEG. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Now let's talk about what we're not looking for. So that's an example of something good, that's a valid setup, but now let's look for an invalid setup. And that would be something like this right here. We have a bullish FEG. It looks like, TNS may have played out here, right? Because there's this this high kind of overlaps. Even this next one as well does overlap with this FEG, and it looks like we got a decent little reaction off of it. But if you were to measure this, zooming all the way in, bringing out the measuring tool once again, this is too close to the edge. As you can see, it's 1 point away, so it's not 3 points away from the edge, and definitely the lower one is also way too close to the edge. And once again, yes, it is 3 points away from the upper half of the gap, but we're looking for it to be 3 points away from both sides for a valid setup. Okay, so that's basically just rule number one. That's what rule number one means, is that we need the overlapping high or low to be 3 points away from the edges of the fair value gap. Okay, so moving on to rule number two, the overlapping high or low cannot cut through price action to make it overlap with the FEG. And what that means is basically that we're looking for highs and lows to purely just overlap with an FEG. So first, once again, we're going to go over what we're actually looking for, and then what we're not looking for. So what we're looking for when I say that is something like this, where this low clearly can just overlap with this FEG. We don't have to make it cut through something in between that's not a bearish FEG. It just goes directly from this low through the FEG. There's nothing else in between. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Once again, another example of something that we're looking for would be something like this. This low goes directly through the FEG. There's nothing else in between here that we have to cut through before we get to that FEG. That's what we're looking for. What we're not looking for would be something like this. Say we're looking for a bearish setup here. We're looking for a low that overlaps with this bearish gap. What we're not going to do is we're not looking to take this high through the bullish FEG to then go through the bearish one. Okay, once again, before we can get to this actual gap that we want to short from, which would be this one, you have to cut through this bullish gap. Okay, that was there as well. So that means it is actually a long setup, and of course it did fail because we cut straight through it. But you cannot just take this high and cut it through this bullish FEG to make it then overlap with this bearish one. Okay, that's what we're not looking for. Once again, another example of that would be something like this. Say you're looking for a short here, looking for a low that overlaps with the FEG, right? You would not take this high to cut it through this bullish gap and then get it through to the bearish one. Okay, that's what we're not looking for. What we are looking for, once again, is something like this, or this low. We don't have to get through anything else before we get it through this bearish FEG. It just simply goes straight through to the bearish FEG. That's what we're looking for. Okay. So moving on to rule number 3. The entries can only be the highest overlapping high or the lowest overlapping low. And that sounds a little bit confusing, but it's very simple. All we're looking for is simply the highest high or the lowest low that overlaps. And once again, that may sound confusing, but we're going to simplify it here and give some pretty good examples here. This gap is what we're looking for short from, right? The entries can only be the highest overlapping high or the lowest overlapping low. What this means is if we're looking to short from this FEG, there's a lot of lows that overlap with this FEG. They're just going to mark out a couple of them here. We've got 3 so far. There's 4 right there. There's maybe, 5 or 6 here, right? All we're looking for, once again, is the highest overlapping high or the lowest overlapping low. What this means is if we have a bunch of lows here that overlap, we're going to get rid of all the middle ones. We're only looking for the lowest one or the highest one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of all these little ones that are in the middle. And so what we're left with is the lowest low that overlaps, which would actually be this one, sorry. The lowest low that overlaps here, and then the highest low that overlaps, which would actually be this one. Okay. So that way you're not getting overwhelmed with a bunch of lows that overlap here. You're simply picking the lowest one or the highest one to short from, of course, depending on if you're trading version 1 or 2, and we'll come back to this as well when I explain that. But this is only what we're looking for, okay? Once again, what we're not looking for is something like these middle ones here. You're not looking to short that one. You're not looking to short from this one, right? And you're definitely not looking to short from this one. Okay, why would you not want to short from this one? Why is that? It's because it violates the rule that we just went over, which is rule number 2. It cannot cut through PA. When we extend this line here, it has to hit something before we get it to overlap the FEG. The entries should only go straight through an FEG. It's not looking to hit anything else, just to simplify it. If we have to hit something like another wick, that's not a real entry. It has to go straight to an FEG, okay? Another example of this would be, once again, if we're looking for the highest low that overlaps or the lowest low that directly overlap with the FEG, once again, not this because it doesn't overlap with the FEG. It is the lowest low here, but it doesn't overlap. The lowest low that overlaps with the FEG would be this one here. And then the highest high, or the highest low, sorry, that overlaps would be this one, which means these two would be your 2 potential entries. There is a third low that overlaps here, but what is that? It's one that's in the middle, right? So remember, we're ignoring the middle one. We're only looking for the ones, the lowest low that overlaps or the highest low that overlaps. Once again, really quick, let's just do a bullish example. So once again, the lowest high in this scenario that overlaps would be this one. I know you may be thinking, well, Playa looks like this, but you can see it does not actually overlap with the FEG. That would be the lowest one. There are a bunch of other highs as well, a bunch of middle ones. If I zoom in here, you may be thinking, well, Playa, this looks like the highest one, but remember rule number 1, it has to be at least 3 points away from the FEG. So this high does overlap, but it violates the first rule. Actually, zooming all the way in here, it actually doesn't violate the rule. So that's why it's good to measure some of these, because it's actually exactly, sorry, never mind, it does violate the rule. Sorry, scratch that. But it's good to check because sometimes they look a little close, sometimes they're right on it, and it's a valid setup. This one right here, this would be invalid. So therefore, this right here would be the highest high that overlaps while keeping in check with all our rules. This one would be a middle line that we're not looking for. These, you're left with the highest high that overlaps or the lowest high that overlaps to once again fit with our rule number 3, which I don't know where it went. There it is. But remember, rule number 3, you can only look for the highest overlapping high or the lowest overlapping low. Okay, so moving on to rule number 4, if TnS has already played out within an FVG, then it should no longer be used. So right about here, we had basically two fair value gaps here, two bearish ones. We'll only focus on this one to keep it simple. If we're looking to short from this gap here, what we have to do is we have to find the highest high and the lowest high that overlap with this FVG while still keeping in line with our rules. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mark out every single low that overlaps with this FVG, one that I think could be a potential entry. Okay, looks like we have 3. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the highest one because it looks like it's a little close to the edge. Okay, so it's 1 point away from the edge, which means it's invalid. So this cannot be used. Let's take a look at this one. It's 4 points away from that side. Let's see the other side. It's 7 points away from that side, so that one's good. What about this the lowest one here? It's 5 points away from that side. It's got to be more than 3 points to the other side. Yep, so 6 points away from that side, which means you have 2 potential entries in this fair value gap to short from. Okay. Now, TnS got its TP. Remember, we're not here to talk about TPs. We're only talking about the rules. TnS got its TP down here. Okay. Now, when it got this Wix entry, the TP was technically here. As the day moves along, we actually come back to this FVG, and it looks like it's still being respected. Even though this is very nice that it's still respected after quite some time, it still violates rule number 4. Because why? If TnS has already played out within the FVG, then the FVG should no longer be used. That would be violating rule number 4 from you trying a short here. Okay. So since TnS already had been used on this 725 candle, you're not looking to short this again when it comes back around 9:30 and 9:45 here. Even though it does work, even though it does play out for a pretty nice short, you're not looking to short this again because that is not the model. Okay. So moving on to rule number 5. If the FEG's original take profit has already been hit, then use the TnS entry to realign for your target. Okay. So we're going to go find an example of this, and this would be from the 9th as well, the 12 p.m. FEG, which would be this one. So here's where we actually will talk about how TnS gets its target a little bit. So the way that TnS gets its target is that it's looking for the entry, and then you look to the left of the candle that gets its entry for your target. The way a regular FEG is supposed to work is whenever we tap an FEG, whatever candle that taps into it, you look to the left. So this candle taps the FEG for the first time here. One candle to the left, we have a low right here. This low is the target for this fair value gap to work. That would be the target for TnS as well, if it had got its entry. Where's the entry for TnS? It's right here, this low. As you can see, we missed the TnS entry here when we tapped into this FEG. It looks like we almost tapped it, but we missed it. So actually, let me make sure that we're only focusing on this price action here. Since this TP got hit, we'll just call this the OGTP. Since the OGTP got hit, once TnS gets its entry here, you would have to use this candle, the candle that taps into the entry, which would be this one, to realign for your target. And what does that mean? All it means is that whenever TnS finally gets its entry, you simply look one candlestick to the left, and that would be your target. Okay, so you would short this, and then that would be your TP. Now, of course, unfortunately, in this example, it doesn't actually hit. This one actually got stopped right there. But that is how you do it. That's how rule number 5 works. Okay. We'll see if we can find one more example of that. So this will just be another example for rule number 5 here. If you're looking to short this FEG, remember rule number 5 says that if the original TP has been hit on the FEG, then you look for the TnS entry to realign for your target. In this case, the lowest low is way down here, but we tap into the FVG for the first time here on this candle right here. You look to the left of that candle, the original TP would be this line here. You can see it gets hit right there, and TnS finally gets tagged in here. So once it gets tagged in here, all you do is simply look to the left. This low right here would be the target for TnS. Yes, it is very small, but that is technically the TP for TnS using this rule. Okay. And once again, since this TP has been hit, you're no longer looking to short from this FVG, because technically speaking, TnS has already played out within this FVG. You're no longer looking to short from the higher entries, even though they have not been tagged in as well. You're no longer looking to short from this FVG because that would be violating rule number 4. Okay. So moving on to our final rule, rule number 6 is probably one of the most important rules. Okay, rule number 6. No using new week opening gaps or new day opening gaps for setups. Okay. This is kind of a newer rule because it doesn't happen too often, but when it does happen, you have to keep this one in mind. So we're going to go over an example or a couple examples of this one as well. So for this, I'm going to go back to the 22nd. So you don't necessarily need to know what a new week opening gap is. All you need to know is that it's not a fair value gap. Okay. A fair value gap is something entirely different than a new week opening gap. A new week opening gap will look something like this, where it's just a massive, massive space in between the candles, right? It's this big, big gap. That's what, it's in the name. A new week opening gap. It's a gap. It's going to look like a big space. It's not the same thing as a fair value gap. And once again, you don't need to even know what a fair value gap is. You just need to know it's not the same thing, okay? What can help you know what it is? Something like an indicator. Okay, so if you have an indicator on, it may show you the new week opening gaps. Let me just extend this super far back so we can see this one. Maybe not. But truly, this is a new week opening gap right here, or even a new day opening gap. Actually, this one would be a new day opening gap. But you're not looking for TnS here. So as you can see, this is a big, big gap. You're not looking for TnS, even though there are some highs that overlap with this new day opening gap. You're not looking for TnS here because that violates the rule. Okay, because when we come back to some of these gaps, we end up cutting through all of them. There's no point in looking for TnS there if all we're going to do is fill in this gap completely. Okay, that's the reason why. Let's go to another example. So right here, this is a really good example. So remember, the rule is we're not looking to take a trade from the new week opening gap. Once again, the new week opening gap in this example would be this. Some people would draw it from the candle body itself like this, or some people would draw it like this. Once again, you don't need to know what it is. An indicator can help you. An indicator should pick this one up. As you can see, this gray box represents the new week opening gap. Okay. The actual FVG in the 5-minute here, technically speaking, starts from here, the candle open, to about right here where it closes. This is the FVG. This is the new week opening gap. What this rule means is that you're not looking for TnS up here. However, you can look for TnS right here, because as long as it still is in line with all the other rules. So let's make sure this low that overlaps with the FVG, is it 3 points away? Yes. Does it overlap? Yes. Is it inside of an FVG? Yes. This up here, it does overlap, but this is a new week opening gap. This is not a fair value gap. This right here, though, if it got tagged in, it would be valid. So going all the way, extending this will be an example of using TnS to realign for your entry, which is rule number 5. This FVG got tapped in for the first time here. You look to the left, this low definitely got hit. Once we come back for this gap, TnS gets its entry finally. You use the candlestick that gets the entry, which would be this one. You look to the left, this low is the TP. Technically speaking, once again, in this example, it's not for nearly, a lot of points. However, the TP has been hit. So when we come back even a third time to wick into it, you're no longer looking for the short because the TP has been hit. Okay, so that's rule number 6. That is the final rule. Actually, let's go over one more example. This is a new day opening gap, this one. So once again, the new day opening gap itself is this right here. This would be the new day opening gap. Some people draw it from, using the wicks like this. You could draw it like this as well. But either way, this major, this big space in between the candles is the new day opening gap. The actual 5-minute FVG is actually right here. From the open to where the other wick is, this is an FVG. Is there TnS here? If you look all the way back, there actually is TnS. This low overlaps with the FVG. This one is also a low, but it doesn't overlap. As you can see, if I zoom in here, you can see TnS did get its entry right here. Now, where's the target? If this candle tapped the FVG for the first time, you look to the left, this low, the original TP, has still not been hit at the time of TnS getting its entry. Let me back up here so we can see how it would look in live time. This low would be the target. This is the original TP. It has still not been hit yet, which means when TnS gets its entry, that is your target. Okay. Even with a new day opening gap above you, this is still a valid TnS setup because there's an actual FVG here. Okay, I want to make that very, very clear. Sometimes there is no actual gap. Sometimes there is. That's why I went over the other examples as well. Once again, this example has a gap, an actual FVG. There is a new day opening gap above it. However, there's still an FVG here, and it does get its CP. But some examples will have no fair value gap here at all, and those are the ones that you're not looking to take. Once again, we're actually going to go over version 2 rules as well. So for TnS version 2, it's very simple. All the rules are exactly the same except for one thing. So for version 2, all you're looking for is this. If it's a bullish FVG, then you're only looking for the bearish candle's high or low that overlaps with that FVG. If it's a bearish FVG, then you need a bullish candle high or low that overlaps with that FVG, all while still incorporating all of these rules here. So all the same rules, except now we're only looking for a bullish candle to overlap with the bearish FVG, and we're looking for a bearish candle for a bullish FVG. But let's look at an example of that. So this will be TnS version 2. How does version 2 work? Okay, so for example, like this. This is what we're not looking for example. This is TnS. It actually doesn't get tapped in, but this would be an example of what we're not looking for. A bearish FVG with a bearish candle low that overlaps with the FVG. This one as well overlaps. Let's make sure that it's 3 points away. Okay, it is 3 points away from the edge, which means this is a valid short. You have 2 entries here. The lower one gets the entry, and then it does play out. However, this is not TnS version 2. For TnS version 2, you're looking for a bullish candle low that overlaps with this FVG. Something like that for version 2 would be an example like this. We have a bearish FVG, but you're looking for a bullish candle to overlap with this bearish FVG. That is version 2. Okay, once again, bearish FVG, bullish candle low that overlaps while still keeping all of our rules. Is it 3 points away from that side? Yes. Let's see the other side. Yes, it is 3 points away. Is it the highest low that overlaps? Yes. Okay, we're keeping all the same rules. It's just simply a bullish candle overlapping with a bearish FVG, or a bearish candle overlapping with a bullish FVG, and that something like that for version 2 would be something like this. However, of course, this one doesn't play out, but we're just looking at the entry itself here. Bullish FVG, bearish candle that overlaps. Let's see, does it meet the rules? It's 2 points away. This would be an invalid long. However, it's still, I'm just trying to get you guys to understand, we're looking for a bearish candle that overlaps with the bullish gap. That is version 2. Okay, so this also would be version 2. This bearish FEG, ignoring what happened after. We're only focusing on the setup itself here. Bearish FEG with a bullish candle low that overlaps. That is version 2. Now, you may be thinking, well, Plyo, there's other lows here. That wasn't exactly the lowest low. This one right here is version 2, but it's not exactly the lowest low. What does that mean? It means that all the other ones would be version 1. Okay, so let's highlight this. So red right here represents version 2. So we're going to name this version 2. This right here is version 1. Okay, so this would be a short. Let's make sure that it meets all our rules here. It is 3 points away from the edge. It's definitely 3 points away from the other side. This low down here, is it 3 points away? It is. So this also would be version 1. Okay. So if you're only trading version 1, then this technically would be a middle low that you're not looking to enter, right? You're no longer looking at this low that version 2 is only looking at. Version 2 is ignoring both of these lows in between the lows, that the lowest one here, and it's ignoring the highest one. It's only looking at this one. So you have to take your pick. We're not here to trade both as well. You're not trading both versions at the same time. You're only picking one or the other. Okay? That's it. But that wouldn't be an example of a version 2 short. You're not looking for the bearish candles that overlap with the bearish FEG. It's simply a bullish candle that overlaps with the bearish FEG for version 2. Once again. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this class, guys. And yeah, I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.